On Tatooine, Anakin Skywalker is born, a being generated directly from the Force. At the same time, on a distant planet, lives Yeler, a former Jedi who left the Order because he questioned its methods. Yeler, a former Padawan of Jocasta Nu, developed a deep understanding of the Force through years of study and meditation. After feeling a strong disturbance in the Force, Yeler is visited by the ghost of Jolee Bindo, who informs him of the birth of the Chosen One. Following directions, Yeler rescues Anakin and his mother Shmi, taking them to Kashik, where he trains the young man from infancy. Under Yeler's tutelage and Jolee's spiritual guidance, Anakin develops extraordinary abilities, learning the techniques that Yeler gleaned from the Jedi library and also developing new ones together. Yeler made Anakin learn to deal with both the light and dark sides of the Force. When ready, they go to Coruscant, where Jocasta Nu confirms Anakin's unique potential through midichlorian tests. While Yeler introduced Anakin to the Council, the Jedi have to leave for Geonosis, where an intense battle rages in an arena filled with droids and Jedi. Yeler and Anakin show impressive synchrony in combat, drawing the attention of all the Masters present, especially Yoda and Mace Windu. The decisive moment comes when Count Dooku tries to escape, being pursued by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yeler, with Anakin close behind. In a cave, the situation turns tragic when Dooku mortally wounds Yeler, triggering an emotional transformation in Anakin. In his last moments, Yeler imparts final words of wisdom to his apprentice, reminding him of his mission and the teachings they shared. What follows is an extraordinary demonstration of the young Jedi's power. Anakin not only neutralizes Dooku's Force beams with a technique never seen before, creating an impenetrable Force field, but also defeats him with precise and lethal movements, demonstrating an absolute mastery of the Force. After rescuing an impressed Obi-Wan Kenobi, who witnessed the whole scene, the event is reported to the Jedi Council. The episode leaves the Jedi Masters deep in thought, especially Yoda, who finally recognizes Anakin as the possible Chosen One, while the Council ponders the implications of this revelation for the future of the Jedi Order and the Republic as a whole. Anakin was summoned to a special audience at the Jedi Council. The room was silent when he entered, with all the Masters in position, attentive to the young man who had made such an impression on the Order. Anakin sensed the solemnity of the moment and respectfully waited, noticing the intensity of the gazes on him. He knew that this meeting was an opportunity to clarify his intentions and honor the memory of his master Yeler. Obi-Wan took the floor first, thanking Anakin once again for his help on Geonosis. He told the Council in detail what Anakin had done during the battle and the impressive strength he had shown against Count Dooku. The Masters listened with expressions of surprise and admiration, recognizing that the young man possessed rare skills and unusual courage for someone his age. Mace Windu added, addressing Anakin with respect and gratitude. "We appreciate your help on the mission, Anakin," he said seriously, "and we are all very sorry for the loss of your master, Yeler." The other Masters nodded in agreement, showing respect and empathy. It was clear to Anakin that Yeler had a special place in the minds of many of those present, and that comforted him in some way. Yoda then asked Anakin about his future journey. "Don't you want to join the Jedi Order, young Skywalker?" he asked. "Yeler recently promoted you to Jedi Knight." Anakin, with a calm and respectful tone, replied, "I would be honored, Master. But like my master, I feel that my mission is to help the Republic, but not necessarily within the Jedi Order. However, I would like to help whenever you need me and learn from all of you whenever possible." Yoda, with a slight smile, replied, "Well done, young Skywalker. Apparently, we have a lot to learn from you too." Anakin, with a bow, added, "It will be an honor to contribute to the Order whenever I can. Now, I'm off to Kashik to spend some time with my mother and introspect. If you need me, I'll be at your disposal." Yoda, with an expression of admiration, nodded, respecting Anakin's choice. After the hearing, Anakin returned to Kashik. The news of Yeler's death left Shmi deeply shaken, and Anakin devoted himself to comforting her in the early days. He knew that his mother felt the loss as much as he did, as Yeler had been an important figure in their lives. Anakin then decided to retreat to the forest, where he used to train with Yeler, in an attempt to re-establish his emotional and spiritual balance. In the isolation of the forest, Anakin began to delve deeper into the techniques that Yeler had taught him. The first lesson was to rebalance his emotions after the intense events he had experienced. He remembered Yeler's words about the importance of self-knowledge and recognizing when his balance was threatened, because it was in this state of vulnerability that the dark side could infiltrate. Anakin applied the techniques of emotional transmutation, using the Force to restore his inner peace. He spent days in deep meditation, accessing memories and emotions, and allowing the Force to flow freely through his body and mind, dissolving the dense energies of sadness and anger. This process helped him reconnect with the serenity and determination that Yeler had always encouraged. Among his practices, Anakin also resorted to the technique of communicating with Force ghosts, a gift he possessed with great ease. He managed to establish contact with his friend and master Jolee Bindo and former Jedi Masters, who guided and inspired him in his meditations. However, he was waiting for a specific reunion, that of Yeler, the master who had marked his life and his path so profoundly. Then, one fine day, while meditating in silence, Anakin heard a familiar voice coming from behind him. "I see your training continues, young man." Anakin opened his eyes and quickly turned around, only to see Yeler's figure, shrouded in a serene light, just as he had imagined. Anakin, still surprised, exclaimed, "Master!" Yeler smiled and replied, "You must be wondering why I didn't come before." Anakin nodded positively, confirming his curiosity. Yeler explained, "It was important for you to rebalance your emotional side first. Remember what I said about traumatic memories? They're the gateway to the dark side. As these memories were linked to me, you needed to transmute them before we could meet again." Anakin understood the depth of Yeler's words, realizing that his master was preparing him even after death. With a thoughtful expression, Anakin asked, "Do you think I was wrong to kill Dooku?" Yeler watched him for a moment before replying, "Dooku had just killed your master and probably would have killed you too. The great Jedi he once was has turned into a dark lord, capable of causing destruction. You beat him in a fair fight. The point is, by disarming him and leaving him vulnerable according to the Jedi Code, you should have brought him to trial. But remember, we don't follow the code strictly. We do what we think is right." Anakin nodded in agreement, and Yeler continued, "The big question is, what did you feel when he was on his knees and missing an arm in front of you? Did you act out of justice or out of a desire for revenge?" Anakin reflected before answering, "I believe both, Master. I did what I thought was right, but I was also filled with rage." Yeler nodded, understanding the complexity of his apprentice's emotions. "That's exactly the point," replied Yeler. "The Force used me to bring you to the extreme of your feelings, so that you could realize how much anger still affects you and how it can destabilize you. We have to work on these aspects. What do you think?" Anakin, understanding the lesson, agreed again, determined to face the inner shadows that unbalanced him. Yeler praised Anakin for having withdrawn to meditate and, with the techniques they had learned, managed to transmute his negative feelings. "You've done that very well," he said. "Now we need to work so that those feelings don't take root, so that you never make decisions based on them." Anakin felt encouraged by his master's words and pledged to continue his training with even more discipline. Yeler then said, "You have developed a power that is perhaps the greatest any Jedi has ever seen, Anakin, and you will still have the opportunity to improve it. But it is essential that you become a master of not acting on your emotions. Do you understand that?" Anakin answered yes and, curious, asked, "So you'll stay with me from now on, Master?" Yeler, smiling, replied, "If you accept the presence of an old hermit, yes." The two laughed, feeling the lightness of that reunion. The new phase of Anakin's training began. Yeler led him mentally through the most difficult and painful scenarios that could occur, such as the violent loss of his mother. Anakin had to imagine how he would act without losing emotional control, keeping calm in every response he gave, regardless of the seriousness of the proposed situation. Yeler taught Anakin to monitor his heartbeat to assess his emotional state. Whatever mental scenario he faced, Anakin needed to keep his heart calm. If his heartbeat accelerated, it meant he was losing his balance, and he had to use breathing and mental control techniques to restore it. The constant practice of these techniques made him stronger and stronger against the dark side. Time passed between philosophical conversations about right and wrong and intense sessions of meditation and emotional control. Months passed until Anakin received an urgent message from the Jedi Council. The Clone Wars were underway, and the Republic needed all the combat power available to confront the Separatists. The time had come for Anakin to put everything he had learned into practice. Yeler looked at him seriously and said, "It's time to put into practice everything we've developed here. Remember, your emotional state is the gateway to the dark side. Only it can lead you astray. You are the one, and your destiny is in your hands alone." Anakin, strengthened and focused, then set off for Coruscant, determined to face the challenges that awaited him. Anakin dedicated himself intensely to fighting alongside the Jedi in the Clone Wars. Involved in battles on an epic scale, he put all his skills at the disposal of the Republic, facing Separatists, droids, and even other skilled warriors. The war brought him challenges that tested not only his combat prowess, but also his emotional balance, aspects that Yeler had emphasized during his training. During the campaigns, Anakin grew closer and closer to the members of the Jedi Council, forging particularly strong bonds with Obi-Wan Kenobi. The two became great friends and combat partners, fighting side by side on several missions. Obi-Wan came to see in Anakin a leadership potential that few Jedi possessed, recognizing the young man's ability to inspire and protect those around him. The war also gave Anakin the opportunity to test his full potential in combat. He stood out for his unique ability to create battle strategies and for the precision and strength with which he wielded his lightsaber. Each battle was a chance to apply everything he had learned from Yeler, both in terms of combat techniques and emotional control. The battlefield, however chaotic, seemed to be the place where Anakin moved with naturalness and mastery. Obi-Wan, for his part, kept a close eye on Anakin's progress and abilities. At times, Anakin felt that Obi-Wan had been assigned by the Council to supervise him and report on his behavior. He suspected that the Council still had some reservations about him, perhaps because of his background and the intensity of his connection to the Force. However, this didn't bother him. He understood the Order's position and saw Obi-Wan as a true friend and mentor. Anakin also began to stand out for his ability to make decisions under pressure, something rare even among the most experienced Jedi. Thanks to his training with Yeler, he remained calm at critical moments, assessing the situation objectively and staying focused. His poise, even in the worst adversity, impressed the Jedi around him and made him a natural leader. His ability to decide clearly and quickly in the midst of chaos set him apart more and more. These achievements did not go unnoticed by Palpatine, the Chancellor of the Republic. From various sources, he received reports about this super Jedi, who demonstrated exceptional skills and a rare sense of leadership. Palpatine began to follow Anakin's progress with interest, aware that the young man could be a powerful ally or a formidable enemy, depending on how he was guided and influenced. Anakin's outstanding performance in the Clone Wars meant that he quickly rose through the ranks until, even without being an official member of the Jedi Order, he was given the title of General. This promotion gave him the autonomy and resources to lead squads of clone troopers on decisive missions, which only increased his popularity and recognition for his bravery and power. During this period, an important new figure appeared in Anakin's life: Ahsoka Tano. The young Jedi had a questioning personality similar to Anakin's and, in a way, to Yeler's. She was skilled and had a strong personality. Skilled and with a strong connection to the Force, Ahsoka showed enormous potential, but also an independent spirit that set her apart from the traditional Jedi. It was Obi-Wan who suggested that Anakin take over Ahsoka's training as her Padawan. At first, Anakin was reluctant, as he didn't see himself as a mentor. However, Obi-Wan insisted, arguing that Ahsoka would not adapt to the rigid methods of the Order, and that learning alongside Anakin outside the formal confines could help the young Jedi develop her true potential. Anakin considered the idea and, convinced by Obi-Wan, accepted the mission to train her. The relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka quickly evolved into a unique partnership. He recognized in her the same determination and indomitable spirit that he saw in himself and in Yeler. Training Ahsoka became not only a responsibility, but an experience that helped him reflect on his own journey and the teachings that Yeler had passed on to him. Ahsoka found the ideal teacher in Anakin, as he didn't follow the rigor of the traditional masters of the Jedi Order, allowing her the same freedom he had experienced with Yeler. This less formal and more intuitive training environment allowed Ahsoka to explore and develop her skills naturally, which allowed her to progress quickly. The relationship between master and apprentice was one of mutual respect and freedom, something rare among the Jedi, which helped Ahsoka feel more confident and connected to the Force. Anakin shared with Ahsoka some of the techniques he had learned and developed with Yeler. Although she didn't have the same natural ease as Anakin, she dedicated herself intensely and, over time, became an extremely strong and skilled warrior. Her connection with the Force deepened and her emotional balance became increasingly solid. Ahsoka was determined and resilient, characteristics that made her stand out among other Jedi her age. Training with Ahsoka also provided great development for Anakin. By teaching, he had the opportunity to put Yeler's teachings into practice in war situations and, at the same time, consolidate and organize his own knowledge to pass on to the Padawan. The responsibility of guiding her helped him mature as a Jedi and as a leader, and he realized that the process of teaching was also a form of learning. The Jedi Council began to notice Ahsoka's impressive development, which highlighted yet another of Anakin's skills, that of being an excellent teacher. Obi-Wan made a point of telling them how Anakin dedicated himself to teaching Ahsoka not only to be a warrior, but also to become a balanced and wise Jedi, capable of making the right decisions in the most extreme situations. Anakin's dedication to the Padawan underlined his commitment and responsibility as a mentor. As the Clone Wars drew to a close, Ahsoka was unjustly accused of treason, which caused significant tension. However, despite the seriousness of the accusation, the emotional impact on Ahsoka was not as profound, for two reasons. Firstly, she had been trained by Anakin to face any adversity without losing her balance, a skill that strengthened her in situations of injustice and challenge. Secondly, Ahsoka, like Anakin, was an independent Jedi and not officially linked to the Order. For this reason, the accusation did not have such a strong impact on her identity and convictions. When she was acquitted, she decided to spend some time away from the capital to reflect on the events and find her center again. Anakin decided to accompany her on this retreat and suggested that Ahsoka go to Kashik, where she could spend time with her mother, Shmi. He believed that Kashik's serenity and Shmi's simple wisdom would do Ahsoka good and help her process everything that had happened. She accepted and the two set off for the planet. On arrival, Ahsoka was warmly welcomed by Shmi, who quickly formed a special bond with the young Jedi. Shmi treated her like a kind of granddaughter, with affection and attention, offering her a warm and familiar environment. This time on Kashik, alongside Anakin and Shmi, brought Ahsoka inner peace and allowed her to further strengthen her emotional balance. Anakin divided his time between visits to the capital and Ahsoka's training in Kashik. He used every moment to guide her in perfecting the techniques developed by Yeler, helping her to deepen her connection with the Force. Ahsoka, for her part, absorbed each lesson with gratitude and determination, knowing that this training would make her even better prepared for future challenges. On one of his trips to the capital, while walking through the corridors of the Senate alongside Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin came across a figure that left him paralyzed. It was as if time had stopped. Obi-Wan, who was still talking to him, noticed that Anakin seemed absorbed, without reaction. Anakin couldn't look away from a woman who was walking down the corridor in front of them. Concerned, Obi-Wan caught his eye. "Anakin? Anakin," almost whispering, asked, "Who is she?" Obi-Wan smiled and replied, "That's Padme Amidala, Senator of Naboo." Obi-Wan, realizing the impact Padme was having on Anakin, joked, "Anakin, why are you looking at her like that? Have you forgotten that you're a Jedi Knight?" Laughing, he reminded Anakin of the Jedi principles. Smiling back, Anakin put his hand on his friend's shoulder and replied, "But I'm not part of the Order. Have you forgotten?" With a mischievous grin, he headed towards Padme, leaving Obi-Wan watching, a little surprised by Anakin's relaxed attitude. From that moment on, Anakin looked for excuses to meet Padme whenever he was in the capital. For him, every meeting was an opportunity to get to know her better. Padme, for her part, found Anakin's personality curious. This Jedi Knight was nothing like the Jedi she knew. He was intense, fun, and seemed to bring a freshness that Padme found intriguing. This mutual interest between them soon brought them closer together. When Anakin returned to Kashik, both Ahsoka and Shmi noticed that something had changed in him. He was happier, smiled for no reason, and sometimes seemed lost in thought. Shmi, as a mother, sensed that her son was in love, and Ahsoka, with her sensitivity, soon realized it too. The two laughed among themselves, making jokes about Anakin's behavior, and exchanged hypotheses about the reason for his obvious transformation. Shmi and Ahsoka, when they were alone, had fun coming up with theories about who might be the person occupying Anakin's thoughts. Both were almost certain that he was in love, but decided not to broach the subject directly with him. They knew he would open up when he was ready, so they just watched and laughed discreetly at his new posture. The relationship between Anakin and Padme grew closer, and soon they began living a relationship in secret at Padme's request. She feared the repercussions and complications that a public romance could bring, considering her positions. Anakin, on the other hand, cared little about keeping the relationship hidden. He just wanted to be by her side. For him, that bond was a source of happiness, and that was all that mattered. On one of Anakin's trips to the capital, Ahsoka accompanied him. As they walked, they came across Padme, and Ahsoka quickly noticed the special look Anakin was giving the senator. Discreetly, she asked, "Is that her?" Anakin tried to get her to be quiet, promising that he would explain everything later. Later, Anakin told Ahsoka the truth, and she ended up meeting Padme, with whom she formed a sincere and natural friendship. Gradually, Anakin began to trust Padme so much that he included her in his circle of trust. In secret, he took her to Kashik with Ahsoka to meet his mother, Shmi. The atmosphere in Kashik was peaceful and welcoming, and Padme immediately felt at home with them. For Anakin, the presence of Padme, Shmi, and Ahsoka represented a kind of family he had never imagined having. The moments the four of them spent together on Kashik strengthened the bonds between them. Shmi treated Padme like a daughter and Ahsoka like a granddaughter, creating a loving family atmosphere that brought peace to everyone. Padme, for her part, found refuge in Kashik, away from the political pressures and responsibilities of her position. Those days together created memories that everyone would carry with them forever. The deep emotional bond between them would become a solid foundation that would influence future decisions. This unique and rare bond planted the seeds of a bond that would transcend time and the adversities that were yet to come, marking the destiny of all of them and, eventually, the future of the galaxy. Another figure who appeared constantly in Anakin's life during his comings and goings in the capital was Palpatine, the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. With the fame Anakin had gained in the Clone Wars and his impressive victory over Count Dooku, Palpatine's interest in the young Jedi only increased. He saw in Anakin immense potential, but also an opportunity to exploit the young man's abilities for the benefit of his own dark plans. Palpatine, always finding reasons to get close to Anakin, surrounded him with praise and constantly exalted him. Taking advantage of the fact that Anakin didn't formally belong to the Jedi Order, Palpatine made a point of praising his independence, setting him above the rest of the Jedi. He reinforced the idea that Anakin was a superior warrior and that the Jedi Council was incapable of perceiving his value. Palpatine often mentioned that, in his opinion, the Council should consider Anakin an official member, even though he was independent. Palpatine subtly planted this idea by saying that the Jedi underestimated Anakin and that he deserved to be recognized for his superiority to others. These insinuations, although flattering, had a tone that began to annoy Anakin. Thanks to the discernment Anakin had developed with his master Yeler, he didn't accept these words passively. The philosophical training he had received made him questioning and wary of Palpatine's compliments. Over time, Anakin began to notice that the Chancellor's compliments were accompanied by a disguised intention. Palpatine's words, once subtle, began to seem manipulative, and this made him suspicious. During this period, Padme revealed to Anakin that she was pregnant, and together they decided to marry in secret on Naboo. The ceremony was discreet, attended by Shmi and Ahsoka, people who were already part of their close circle. This moment brought indescribable happiness to Anakin, and he felt that he had finally found a family and a purpose in life beyond war and combat. Soon after, Anakin began to be plagued by recurring nightmares in which he saw Padme die during childbirth. The visions were intense and made him wake up startled, shaken by the possibility of losing the person he loved. Each nightmare seemed more real than the last, and Anakin's anguish grew each night, making him fear that what he was seeing was a true premonition. Palpatine, sensing Anakin's concern, found the perfect moment to get even closer. In a casual conversation, he managed to get Anakin, distracted by worry, to confess the reason for his anguish. The Chancellor listened patiently and, taking advantage of the young man's vulnerability, offered him a solution that promised to ease his pain. It was in this context that Palpatine mentioned the ancient story of Darth Plagueis, a Sith Lord who, according to him, had the power to prevent death. Palpatine implied that Plagueis had developed a technique capable of saving people from death, arousing hope in Anakin, but also distrust. Anakin was intrigued by the fact that Palpatine knew so much about the Sith and the mysteries of the Force. For Anakin, Palpatine's words were like a slap in the face. He, who had become an expert in advanced Force techniques along with Yeler, felt that this might be a question he could explore himself. Determined to find a solution without resorting to dubious influences, Anakin decided that he would seek the answer in the practices and techniques he had learned throughout his journey. So Anakin retreated to the forests of Kashik, where he had spent much of his life honing his Jedi skills. Amidst the peace of the trees and the tranquility of nature, he began a period of deep meditation, seeking an even stronger connection with the Force. In the company of his master, Anakin plunged into an intense spiritual journey, determined to find a way to protect Padme and to change the course of the visions that tormented him. Yeler always reminded Anakin of the importance of not letting himself be carried away by fear, teaching him that this was one of the greatest challenges the Force presented. According to Yeler, fear could divert him from the path of the Chosen One, and Anakin needed to face it with rationality and balance. He insisted that this was the true journey of a Jedi and that Anakin had to maintain control over his emotions in order to achieve his greater purpose. In one of his meditations, Yeler appeared and suggested a new approach. What if you could consciously visualize in more detail the future you saw in your visions? Perhaps you could understand more deeply what is happening. Anakin pondered the idea and decided to give it a try. With determination, he put all his effort into projecting his consciousness into that specific scene, trying to see details beyond what he had already seen in his nightmares. However, no matter how hard he tried, there seemed to be an invisible barrier blocking his vision. The only image that kept appearing was the same as in his dreams, with no additional revelations. He persisted, trying to break through the blockage, but the results remained the same. Until, in one of his most intense efforts, Anakin saw something new. He was kneeling before Palpatine, who was calling him Darth Vader. The shock was so great and repulsive that he was abruptly sucked back to the present, his eyes opening with a jolt. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yeler standing in front of him, looking at him seriously. Anakin, still panting, asked what had happened. Yeler, sensing the intensity of the energy around him, replied, "I'd like to know too. I felt a strong imbalance of the Force coming from you, and I came here." Anakin then related what he had just seen, describing in detail the sight of himself kneeling before the Chancellor, being called Darth Vader. Yeler reflected for a few moments and finally concluded, "He was initiating you as a Sith Lord." Anakin, perplexed, added, "So he is the Sith Lord. The Chancellor is the one the Council has been looking for so long. He is Dooku's master and therefore responsible for his death." Master. Anakin began to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, feeling the urgency to act. Yeler remained silent, visibly thinking. Anakin, overcome by indignation and haste, stood up, determined. I have to go to the capital now. Before he could take another step, Yeler interrupted him with a firmness that surprised Anakin. Sit down, Anakin. Without question, Anakin sat down again, still agitated. Yeler instructed him, close your eyes, breathe deeply, slow your heartbeat, relax, now open your eyes. What should you do? Now calmer, Anakin reflected before answering. If he's the Sith Lord and also the Chancellor, he must have the Senate and the entire structure of the Republic at his fingertips. Yeler confirmed with a slight nod, encouraging him to continue. If I report you to the Council, they will try to arrest you, Anakin concluded, but that may not be enough. Yeler nodded again, leaving Anakin to come to his own conclusions. Anakin reflected on the consequences and said, then he must be eliminated. But if I do that, I'll be accused of assassinating the Chancellor. Yeler agreed, explaining that although the Council could try to prove that Palpatine was the Sith Lord, Anakin would still run the risk of being convicted. He warned him that any action against Palpatine could put his position in danger. Anakin, confused and uncertain, asked his master, "What do you think, Master?" Yeler looked at him with a serious expression and replied, "I believe that you are the chosen one, and that Palpatine represents an imbalance in the Force. The Force has brought you here, and it was no accident that you discovered all this. The power is in your hands, Anakin. You are the chosen one. Only you can decide what to do. I cannot interfere." Anakin, determined, made his decision and set off for Coruscant with the firm intention of doing what he believed was right. He was convinced that this was his mission as the chosen one, to bring balance to the Force by eliminating the threat of the Sith Lord. When he arrived in the capital, he went directly to talk to Mace Windu, telling him everything he had discovered about Palpatine. Windu, after listening to Anakin, decided to act immediately and announced that they would arrest Palpatine and take him to the Senate to face justice. Anakin asked to go along, and Windu, aware of the young Jedi's abilities, agreed. Mace Windu and Anakin entered Palpatine's office, who welcomed them with a wry smile, as if he had been expecting them. Mace Windu announced the Chancellor's arrest, informing him that he would be brought before the Senate to answer for his crimes. However, instead of surrendering, Palpatine threw his red saber and leapt aggressively towards the Jedi, showing that he was ready to fight to the bitter end. Before Palpatine could attack, Anakin reached out and, using the Force, grabbed the Chancellor by the neck in midair. The force of the grip caused Palpatine to drop his saber, which fell to the ground. Furious and desperate, Palpatine unleashed a wave of lightning at Anakin, but was surprised to realize that the lightning couldn't get any closer, being repelled by an energy field that Anakin had created, similar to the one he had used against Dooku. Startled and incredulous, Palpatine exclaimed, "What's that? That's impossible." Anakin, in a calm and firm voice, replied, "It's impossible for a Sith." As Palpatine struggled to free himself from Anakin's grip, he managed, with difficulty, to pull a communicator out of his pocket and, in a last-ditch effort, ordered, "Activate Order 66." Immediately after the command, Anakin looked at Windu, who was staring at him with a mixture of surprise and relief. Anakin, in a decisive act, broke Palpatine's neck, putting an end to the Sith threat. He then turned to Windu and declared, he was too dangerous to be left alive. Mace Windu, still impressed by Anakin's power, nodded, acknowledging that the young Jedi's decision had been necessary. Anakin, his voice full of concern, asked Windu, "What is Order 66? Mace Windu, confused, replied, "I don't know, but we'd better get back to the Jedi Temple. We need to prepare for any eventuality." The tension in the air only increased, and they both knew that Palpatine had left some plan in the works. Upon returning to the temple, Anakin and Windu were confronted with a terrifying scene. A troop of clones invading the Jedi Temple, brutally attacking the Jedi who were trying to defend themselves. Padawans and Jedi Knights were running everywhere, trying to escape the ambush. Seeing the number of soldiers, Mace Windu suggested that they not go in, as the numbers were against them. At that moment, Windu received a series of desperate messages from Jedi in different parts of the galaxy. all reporting that they were under attack by the clone troopers. It was then that Anakin and Windu realized the extent of Order 66, a plan for the complete extermination of the Jedi throughout the galaxy, something Palpatine had carefully planned in order to destroy the Order once and for all. As he processed the situation, panic seized Anakin, who, in desperation, remembered Ahsoka. He called out her name, aware of the danger she might be facing. Determined to protect her, Anakin turned and set off quickly back to Kashik, while Mace Windu decided to seek safe haven on Coruscant, aware that the Republic was no longer safe for a Jedi. When Anakin arrived on Kashik, he felt a great sense of relief when he saw Ahsoka next to Yoda and Chewbacca. Yoda sensed the disturbance in the Force and foresaw the attack on the two of them. Anakin took a deep breath, feeling grateful for Yoda's intuition and wisdom, which had managed to protect those he loved. Kashik seemed to be a safe haven, at least for the time being. With a lighter heart, Anakin told Yoda everything that had happened on Coruscant. That Palpatine was the Sith Lord they had been looking for, and that, before he was killed, he had activated Order 66, a plan to exterminate all the Jedi scattered throughout the galaxy. Yoda, with his serious countenance, listened attentively to every word, understanding the gravity of the situation and the chaos that was plaguing the Order. Leaving Ahsoka in hiding and in charge of protecting Shmi, Anakin and Yoda immediately set off to find Mace Windu. Along the way, they received a message from Bail Organa with the coordinates of their location and a promise of support. The senator from Alderaan was willing to help and guarantee the safety of the remaining Jedi. On reaching Organa's ship, Anakin and Yoda met Windu and also Obi-Wan, who had also escaped the clone attacks. The reunion was fraught with concern, and the Jedi knew they needed to focus on their next decisions. Organa reported the latest news he had received. The attacks were ongoing, and few Jedi had managed to survive. An expression of sadness dominated everyone's countenance, as they learned that almost the entire Jedi Order had been wiped out. Windu then told Obi-Wan and Yoda the details of the confrontation with Palpatine, explaining how Anakin had prevented the Sith Lord from escaping and implementing his plan to turn the Republic into a galactic empire. Obi-Wan and Yoda were once again impressed by Anakin's exceptional courage and powers. With a serious tone, Windu added, "The Jedi have almost all been destroyed, and if it hadn't been for Anakin, the Republic would have been consumed too. We would be witnessing the birth of an empire, with Palpatine at its head." Anakin felt the weight of Windu's words, but remained silent, aware that he had accomplished his mission. After the situation had stabilized somewhat, the group decided to return to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. When they arrived, they found a scene of destruction, but also some survivors. A few Jedi who had managed to hide and a group of younglings who had taken refuge in the council chamber during the attack. The temple was in ruins, but there was still hope among those who had resisted. Anakin, feeling a new responsibility towards the survivors, momentarily said goodbye to his masters and set off for Naboo to find Padme. He needed to see her and make sure she and her children were safe. The masters, meanwhile, stayed to reorganize the surviving Jedi and discuss the next steps needed to restore the Order. In the end, only 3 masters remained to try to rebuild the Jedi Order: Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Mace Windu. They knew that the task would be difficult and that the future of the Jedi was in jeopardy, but they also understood that Anakin, the Chosen One, had played a key role and hoped that his presence could bring a new beginning to the galaxy. After a while, Anakin was acquitted of the charge of killing the Chancellor. The evidence that Palpatine was the Sith Lord threatening the Republic and the activation of Order 66 weighed in his favor, and justice was served. The truth about Palpatine's actions came out, and Anakin could breathe a sigh of relief, with his honor and loyalty to the Republic preserved. Soon after, Padme gave birth to twins, Luke and Leia, on the peaceful and welcoming planet of Naboo. The arrival of their children brought indescribable happiness to Anakin, who now saw a new purpose in his family. The birth of the children was for him a sign of hope and renewal, a reason to fight for a better and fairer future. Anakin, feeling the need to reunite those he loved, invited Shmi and Ahsoka to live on Naboo. He wanted his children to grow up in a peaceful environment, surrounded by the people who had helped him on his journey. For him, Naboo represented a safe haven, a place where he could enjoy his family and, at the same time, contribute to restoring peace to the galaxy. After a few days on Naboo, Anakin began to miss contact with his master, Yeler. Feeling this need for guidance, he went to a nearby forest to meditate and try to get in touch with Yeler's spirit. He knew that Yeler always appeared at times when he most needed wisdom and clarity. Soon, Yeler appeared in the soft light of the forest, greeting him with a peaceful gaze. "Well done, my friend," said Yeler. "It seems you have made wise choices." Anakin, still uncertain, replied, "Is that so, Master? Many Jedi have died." Yeler nodded, but explained, "Yes, perhaps the balance of the Force was not only the destruction of evil that grew out of proportion, but also the rebuilding of good. That is the nature of the Force." Anakin, intrigued, asked, "Are you talking about the Jedi Order?" Yeler replied calmly, "I'm talking about everything, starting with the Order. I think they're going to need you, Anakin. They're going to need all the philosophical foundations we've built together. Everything we've been through, everything the Force has guided us to do, has been, perhaps, to lay the groundwork for a new Jedi Order. The Jedi were almost destroyed, and if it hadn't been for you, the Republic would have been too," Yeler continued. "Not only the Jedi, but also the Republic will need the Chosen One. I believe your work is not yet done." Anakin, absorbing his master's words, realized that, even with the fall of Palpatine, his mission was perhaps just beginning. Anakin let off steam, saying, "I confess I'm tired of wars, Master. I'd like to spend some time with my family." Yeler smiled understandingly and replied, "Then you'll have to tell them that." Intrigued, Anakin asked, "To whom?" Yeler, with an amused smile, said, "You'd better get back. You seem to have visitors." With a playful nod, Yeler disappeared, leaving Anakin curious about what awaited him. On his return, Anakin found Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Mace Windu waiting for him. Mace Windu, always direct, came forward and said, "We need to talk to you." Anakin already knew what they wanted, as Yeler had suggested the importance of his role in the reconstruction. He knew that, once again, the future of the Order and the Republic was in his hands. Now, Anakin faced another difficult decision. Was it time to embrace his mission as the Chosen One and take responsibility for rebuilding the Jedi, or should he stay with his family on Naboo and concentrate on raising and training the youngest Skywalker, who had just been born?